All right, welcome gamers. I've been verbwanged by BattleMode, and I do want to try to sort of get that, sort of try to understand actually what he's talking about, and maybe this will be the video. So I actually had no idea when we were actually doing this stream. There's a lot of terminology that just went straight over my head, and I don't have a clue what it meant. And so, and look, I know that there is a tactic to actually use. I'm going to call it verbwang because no one's ever called that before. But where you throw random words at somebody to win an argument. Now I know that that's not what BattleMode was doing. I know that because we have a lot of discussions, but to be honest, I've never felt as lost in terms of the understanding of what was being said as what I did during that session. I completely lost track of it. And so what I've done, just to sort of reset all of this, I do really respect what BattleMode's thoughts and processes are when it comes to game design, sort of game criticism, sort of analysis, etc., etc. So I think he's a very deep thinker when it comes to these sorts of things. And so I really, the first goal for me after, at the time I was trying to sort of juggle the timing, juggle things like that. So I wasn't. I guess I couldn't stop him early enough with the jargon, and it's jargon that he's obviously used to using. It's jargon I've never heard of before. So I thought we'd actually sort of go through all of that, unpack it, and try to get an understanding of what he was trying to say, and so I can then respond to that. So I'm going to make this is the goal of this, is to not actually try to win an argument. This is to try to understand what BattleMode was actually or the points he was trying to make. Because I had no idea at the time. I do now a little bit, I think, in hindsight. I've been able to replay. And if you are watching, if you are sort of wanting to sort of see where this one came from, I'll put a link in the description of this one as well, I think, if I remember. I'm really bad at remembering these sort of things, but in where we are, we had a very long discussion about all these different games, but then it got pretty heated in around about say 2.5 minutes in, as when we sort of started off fairly sort of neutral, and then it just got more and more aggressive, and so by the time we're about 3 hours into this thing, there's a lot of interaction. Now, I will also point out that a few of you have actually said that I dominated the conversation. I don't think I did, but I will actually I will say one thing about that. I have my microphone when I'm doing my own recordings to, if I start talking, it actually nullifies the sound of the computer. And that did kick in. So there's a lot of times when I'm actually yelling at Ben to, hey, Ben, shut up, type thing, because I'm wanting to interrupt him. And when I listened back to it, I thought, oh, shit, that's my, I've muted him down to around about, say, 30% of his normal volume. And the reason I have it set that way, I'm not going to unset it because it's useful for me when I'm doing when I'm talking over games, is that it actually just nullifies the sound. When it's a conversation like this, it doesn't come across very well. So I will just put that out there. But I still feel that I was trying to understand what Ben was saying, and I do now really get what, just in a very, very much a nutshell as to what was going on. My head, I was trying to think of specifics. I thought that the conversation we were talking about was about specific aspects sort of down in the game. So, for example, the player experience for me is actually where my head was. So I was thinking in terms of player experience, and so I was coming at everything he said from that perspective. And so I misinterpreted a lot of what he was saying. And now that I've listened back to it, I thought, oh, he wasn't thinking in terms of player perspectives. He was thinking in a much broader and higher level of overall game design philosophy. So that's sort of where he was thinking. I think this is my take on it, and so he was not understanding why I was misinterpreting everything he was saying, and I was not understanding anything. I wasn't understanding any of the jargon he was talking about, and we're going to go through that. That's mainly what we're going to be unpacking is the jargon and how that applies to I guess his perspective, but I wasn't considering, I guess, the higher level philosophical aspects of what he was trying to get at. Whereas for me, I do focus extremely heavily on the player experience. Like when I'm presenting any game, like I really try extremely hard to actually put myself always down in what the player is experiencing and how that's coming across. And so that's where my head was at. And so when I looked at it, I thought, oh shit, actually Ben's up in the clouds and I'm down in the dirt. Like it was really quite when I looked at it back again, it was like, okay, this is dramatically different than what I thought it was. So if you are interested in the actual, just in the argument, sort of go into, you'll see that there's, by about here, I think, if I just go and click play.
Game, you can get...
Yeah, we're sort of already into it by 2 minutes 50. It doesn't go for too long, but if you are wanting to sort of see where it goes. So what I did yesterday, actually, just before I went to bed, was to listen to this bit of it and just jot down the things that were said to try to... And the reason I did that was, well, two reasons. I thought if it was... like, I know that Battle Mode wasn't just putting random words out there to verb-wang me, which is the term I've come up with for when people actually throw random words at you. So I knew that wasn't the case, and I did really want to get an understanding of where he was coming from, to see if he's again, just to see if these higher level arguments, like once I figured out, okay, we're on different planes of existence with this stuff, to see if that still is a valid criticism. And I'll say, like, spoiler alert, no, it's not. It's actually not. I think that Ben's being way overly harsh about Age of Wonders. I still, and if I try to sort of take off, my fanboy glasses with the game, because I do have, like, I'm a fanboy of Age of Wonders. I absolutely love it. I've loved the series ever since it first came out in around about the year 2000, or in the very late 90s. I've loved it. It's been my favourite series of games ever since it first came out, and there are many reasons for that. I find, anyway, I won't go through all the reasons. I think it's, the best game ever made, because, but there's a lot of subconscious things that go on in Age of Wonders that actually, for me, just make it an energizing, fun, immersive game. But I won't be defending things that weren't actually addressed. So what I thought I'd do is, because I did want to get some sort of understanding of what all these jargonistic terms actually meant in terms of making it something concrete. Now, I know that we were both under time pressure by the time we got to here. We wanted it to be over and done with within 3 hours, and we really didn't start this argument until about 3 hours in. So Ben was rushing, meaning that he was then throwing these jargon terms at me, and I was thinking in terms of player experience and not getting any of... in the end, to be honest, it was just like it was just word salad to me, and I was just thinking, I got no idea what he's saying. I do say it. I said it too late, and I kicked myself that I didn't actually address the word salad aspect and the jargon aspect earlier, because it completely lost me as soon as he started talking in terms of number wang and inert state systems and reactive state systems and things like this. I know what an inert state is. I don't see how that applies to this game at all. So what I did was, so if you are wanting to sort of go and get it, the argument starts around about I've got 2:48 through here. It's probably a little bit before that, maybe 2:45 or something. So 2 hours 45 in. What I've done is I've actually gone and I got a very, very learned friend of mine to actually go through and explain everything to me. So let me go and introduce them to you. Okay, so please let me introduce you to Mr. ChatGPT. Now, I didn't want it to bullshit me. I didn't want it, because it can do that, of course. It can try to make things better than they sound and so on and so forth. And so I wanted this to be as neutral as possible. So my prompt to it is, I'm going to give you a set of terms and I would like you to give me A, a general definition, B, a definition with regards to game design, C, if it is well known, D, how this could be applied to the game Age of Wonders 4, mainly to do with the combat system, because that's all we really got through. Please treat this as neutral information. If the term is obscure, then please say so. Does that make sense? And so ChatGPT then comes back and sort of says, yes, that makes sense. For each term, I'll assess it under the same 4 headings here, blah, blah, blah. It just goes through and defines essentially what's going on through here. So application to Age of Wonders 4 combat. I'll explain how the concept could be applied specifically to Age of Wonders 4's tactical combat, units, positioning, actions, abilities, damage, status effects, terrain, initiatives per turn structure, army composition, AI decisions, and so forth. Well, that's a bloody good list. That is a really, really good. I've got to say, I'm so impressed with ChatGPT. I know that it can get a lot of things wrong, but it does this sort of stuff extremely well, defining all of these. Like if I had to rate Age of Wonders 4 out of these sorts of things, again, it would be way up there. But anyway, this is what it's going to be focusing on. And I'll keep this neutral and descriptive. In particular, I won't assume that applying a concept to Age of Wonders 4 would necessarily make the game better. Where appropriate, I'll distinguish between this concept describes something Age of Wonders 4 already does, and this is a concept that could potentially be introduced into Age of Wonders 4. I don't think I can be fairer than this, like to actually ask this. And this is the premise that that ChatGPT, my very good friend here, is going to be talking in terms of. If a term is obscure, inconsistent, defined, being used in an unusual way, or doesn't really have an accepted game design meaning, I'll say so rather than trying to make it sound more established than it is. Send me the first term. There we go. Perfect. The first term is number wang. So let's get started here. So number wang, general definition. Number wang is not a genuine mathematical or technical concept. It comes from the British comedy series That Mitchell and Webb Look, in a recurring sketch parodying television game shows. The joke is that contestants call out apparently arbitrary numbers until the host suddenly declares, "That's number wang." There is seemingly no discoverable rule governing which number is correct. The sketch deliberately gives the impression that a rigorous numerical system exists while making its underlying logic nonsensical or inaccessible. So we're getting the feel of it. Okay, so we're getting the feel of where Ben's head's at with Age of Wonders 4. It obviously really confuses him. Consequently, number wang has acquired a non-informational metaphorical meaning, a situation involving lots of numbers, calculations or numerical rules that look meaningful or sophisticated, but where the relationship between those numbers and the actual outcome is difficult to understand, arbitrary, or essentially opaque. I think that's a good start. B, with regards to game design, number wang is not an established game design term. There we go. I'm not an idiot. It's proven I'm not an idiot. If someone uses it when discussing a game's mechanics, they're almost certainly using humorously or critically. Yes, that's true. Not humorously, but critically. In that context, I would interpret number wang as a game system in which numerous numerical values, modifiers, and calculations determine an outcome, but the player has difficulty understanding how those numbers translate into the actual result. Okay, that gives me a very clear paradigm of where Battlemode's head's at when it comes to Age of Wonders. He sees it as a big confusing mess. I don't. I see it as a perfectly structured system that is very easy to get the information you need to actually define where the numbers are kicking in. It does this. The user experience and user interface in Age of Wonders, and I'll just put these little points in here, is just exceptionally good. Like it's well. I mean, it is the best in its genre. Let's face it, many 4Xs just don't put the time into really sort of making the user experience exposed and solid. Age of Wonders 4 does in so many different ways, and it's not a number salad or a number wang system at all. Anyway, let's keep on going. The important distinction is the complexity itself isn't number wang, right? So, for example, a combat system could involve attack, defense, armor, penetration, range, accuracy, and terrain modifiers, and still be perfectly understandable. If the player can develop a useful mental model, high defense makes this unit difficult to hit, armor reduces damage, penetration counters damage, the numbers are doing meaningful explanatory work. This is where Ben... battle mode. Sorry, Ben is battle mode. This is where battle mode is actually referencing dominions. Now, I was confused because I'm thinking again down on the ground, playing like player experience in the actual moment. He's thinking game philosophy. This is exactly what dominions does. and sort of what Eodor does. I think he elevates Eodor way higher in terms of what it does in combat. But this for him is the way things should work. What he's not getting is that Age of Wonders 4 pretty much does the same thing. So it becomes Numberwing like when players instead counter something like, and this is actually where Ben is then starting, this is where his head's at, I think. So attack 73 plus strength 11 plus 20% modifier minus defense 47 plus resistance calculation plus tier scaling, leads to 17 damage and cannot reasonably predict why that produced 17 rather than 12 or 25. This is where I think his innate sort of hatred of the game. I mean, it's not hatred, but anyway, you know what I mean. He's actually sort of coming from it, thinking that this is actually what's in play. To be honest, when I see that, the game that it really reminds me of is actually Gal Civ 4, with the way that their systems work. Like they've got, not in combat, but just in general terms, like, they've got a lot of these modifiers. Again, it lays it all out. The user experience and user interface in Gal Civ 4 is great. It actually tells you what these things do and where the calculations are. So I don't see why this is a problem, and I don't see how this is, again, applied to Age of Wonders 4. I know that there are certainly different modifiers, but they're all easily exposed and intuitive as well, so not Numberwang. The player therefore learns that numbers are desirable without really understanding what the numbers mean. So, okay, so there we go. How well known is it? It's as a game term, obscure, non-existent. There we go. I'm not an idiot. I knew I wasn't an idiot. I thought I was there for a little while. As a cultural reference, reasonably well known in the UK and amongst people familiar with Mitchell and Webb, but certainly not universal. I think I know who they are. I'm not from the UK. I've got no idea. So you might hear a designer, reviewer, or player describe a mechanics as a bit Numberwang, but this would be an analogy rather than a recognised terminology. There are established concepts that overlap with what someone might mean by Numberwang, including system opacity, system overload, calculation complexity, cognitive load, stat bloat, and in some circumstances false precision. I think in this term it is system opacity. The really Age of Wonders 4 exposes everything, so it's not that information overload. I'm thinking that maybe that's what what battle mode is actually concerned about. Calculation complexity. I'm thinking he's also thinking that that's also the case. Again, these aren't really relevant when it comes to Age of Wonders 4. And then I've got like this is actually where. Application to Age of Wonders 4 in terms of the actual combat. Now, it's actually great because it's actually thrown in little examples, and so I can actually I don't have to open the game up. I can basically open these up. So here we go. Let's just go through these. Maybe we'll have a quick look at these and see what it's doing. Look, and again, I don't know if it's made these up or got them from somewhere, but there's the system itself it's a beautiful system, beautiful game. The user experience is like everything is simple as soon as you actually sort of learn it, and everything is exposed through these little icons. I think that this is where Ben was talking about the inert system tags or inerts. Yeah, I think that's what he referred to them as. Is just needing to know what everything actually does, needing to know what all this stuff does. Yes, you do, but it's not something that's onerous. It's not something that takes hours. It's something that happens pretty quickly. This is a battle where things are sort of happening very quickly. Another thing that Ben thought was that the game dragged on and on and on. It doesn't. This is like turn 3 of a combat. The combat is extremely meaningful, extremely tactical. It is predictive if you play it well, as in terms of if you move here, you can expect this sort of outcome. It's very chess-like, puzzle-like in its application. Doesn't make it a bad game. Anyway, let's just go and have a quick look at these different images in through here. So this is actually where when we like before an attack goes in. This I think is where again this counters the argument that it's Numberwang. It shows you like this is a complex example of where something is being targeted, and we're seeing the like essentially what the well, actually, where is it going to be? I think this is like the 85%. Actually, I'm not sure what this is referring to be honest, because this looks like it's an oldish sort of thing, but it's still it often gives you all the buffs and negatives that apply to this is a 2-hit roll. So it's like there's a range unit doing a 2-hit roll where there's actually splash damage coming in. Again, the user experience and user interface shows all this perfectly. So it's going to show you, in this case, it's going to be 1 times, in this case, sort of like, like a shadow sort of type of magical attack coming in. So it's going to be doing just 1 attack and doing 6 damage essentially. But this is actually just showing the 2 hits essentially as to how things are operating. There'll be a base there as well. If you actually press control, you get even more information. But it's very quick and easy. If you don't use this, it doesn't matter. You've still got your 85%, and so we'll get to that anyway. But we don't want to belabor these different sorts of things. And again, just you're looking at icons. You're looking at the how what the level is of the different units, meaning that you can basically sort of you know what low level units going to do. Your high level units, you do need to go in a little bit to have a look to see what they're up to. But is it overwhelming? No, it's not. Anyway, I'll just leave it there. I'll just go to that's those. She says that there's 5 there. I'll just go see what the other ones are. This is actually when you're looking at a unit. Again, it gives you all these different information about how units then sort of behave with their different resistances. And I think this is where Ben is also thinking, like the other games, like in Dominions and those sorts of other games, they're split into all sorts of different parameters. So there's a lot more parameters that then get targeted in different ways. In Age of Wonders 4, you've just got hit points, you've got basic physical defense, and then you've got magical resistance. And so that's how it's applied here. What's the difference? For me, it works perfectly well. You've got different resistance amounts depending on your different abilities, which are all shown in through here. So you've got everything that you need to sort of see as to, and even there, it's telling you what the negatives are. You can very quickly pick a unit and think, okay, this one is susceptible to spirit damage. If you don't know instinctively, like undead units are going to be susceptible to spirit damage, etc., you very quickly just think, okay, I'm going up against an undead army. What units can I bring in that actually counter that? I need to bring in mages. I need to bring in priest type guys. Support units often do spirit damage. I should actually have like a bit of a range of different types of damage in my army. I may have weaponry that I can put onto heroes that actually allows them to do spirit damage. It's actually, for me, it's not a problem. I don't want to get too bogged down in this, but anyway, this is where it actually is. Again, it's sort of, this is again showing percentages to hit, like the 90% back in through here. Again, I won't sort of go into too much detail. I probably won't show these much, to be honest. I don't know if there's a lot to get through here. So let's just read what it says about Age of Wonders 4. This is actually quite an interesting lens through which to examine Age of Wonders. I haven't read this, by the way. I've just put the terms in and I thought we'd just do this live. Because its combat system contains a large number of interacting numerical systems. There we go. So it's sort of saying, hey, maybe he's right. Consider a player evaluating an attack. They potentially need to consider base damage, physical versus elemental damage, defense, resistance, accuracy, critical chance, retaliation, status resistance, strengthened versus weakened, marked, wet, burning and other status effects, flanking, range penalties, unit enchantments, transformations and abilities. None of these individually constitute number wang. In fact, many have fairly clear relationships. Now, when you actually put all those together, even if the game is not a trivial game, and these are all different sorts of things. You don't have to look at all those things, but as you play the game, if you're using a fire mage, there's a very high chance you're going to be inflicting burning on the other enemy unit, which means that subsequently they may be on fire, which then makes them like they've got less resistance to other things, for example. So anyway, for me, I think that this is where Ben is seeing this is an overwhelming, spaghetti-like sort of mishmash of different factors which are meaningless. But anyway, I would disagree if that's what he's thinking. The potential number one problem emerges when enough of them interact that the player stops calculating the outcome themselves and instead relies on the game's predicted combat result. So, for example, So this is cool, it does this. So for example, imagine I move a unit to 1 hex and age1-4 tells me 73% chance to hit, 21 damage. So moving somewhere else produces 83% chance to hit, 25 damage. If I understand why those changed, perhaps I eliminate a range penalty and gain a flanking bonus. The numbers are communicating the tactical system. If instead I think, I'm not entirely sure why it's 25, but the game says this position gives me 25, so I'll attack from here. We're getting into what could informally be called number wang territory, because you don't understand what's going on. It does sort of say up through there that in that case, they're describing what could be a flanking bonus, where you get extra bonus points. And so this distinction matters particularly in age1-4 because the combat preview can effectively perform a significant amount of the underlying calculation for the player. That creates an interesting design spectrum. So transparent system. Player understands mechanics, mentally predicts consequences, UI confirms prediction. Now, I think that Ben was touching on this when he was talking about grammar versus phrasebook, which I'll talk about. I didn't put that into the term because I think that was just, he was using that as an analogy. Complex but learnable systems. So player cannot understands most mechanics, roughly predicts consequence, UI supplies exact results. That's exactly what Age of Wonders 4 does, exactly this one through here. So I don't know how that applies to Number Wang, to be honest. Number Wang-like system player understands that various modifiers exist, cannot reasonably predict their combined consequence, and compares the final numbers supplied by the UI. Again, it spells it all out for you. If you're unsure why something's happening, you just look at it, and it tells you everything that's going on with the calculation. It's not hard. It's not hard. It's not onerous. It doesn't take a lot of time. At the extreme, tactical decision can become which hex makes the number turn green rather than which hex gives me the tactical advantage I understand. So it's a lack of understanding. That's what it's coming down to. So that doesn't necessarily mean the underlying combat system is badly designed. A sophisticated strategy game may deliberately perform complicated calculations so the player doesn't have to. But if we use Number Wang as an analytical metaphor, the relevant question for Age 1-4s would be, do the combat numbers help the player understand the tactical system, or does the player increasingly depend upon the UI's final calculated numbers without understanding how the system arrived at them? So that's probably the most useful interpretation of Number Wang when analysing Age of Wonders 4 combat design. I think that's a really neutral and very, very well balanced and very well structured sort of application of this term to Age of Wonders 4. Now, if we ask that question, do the combat numbers help the player understand the tactical system? I would argue superficially no, but very, very quickly yes. And look, the thing that Ben was talking about when he was talking about grammar versus phrasebook, because I didn't have a clue what he was talking about there either until I sort of really looked at everything else. He thinks that what should happen is that a player should actually have to invest time, or a game, sorry, not the should, but that a game is better if someone invests time in understanding the language of the game and actually, like even if you have to keep on going back and referencing the help files, what it might be at different times, but eventually you end up with an instinctive understanding of how the game works. And so that means you don't have to go back and look at references to actually get that understanding happening. Now, I would put myself in Age of Wonders 4 in the category of instinctively knowing what most things are going to do, and then just using the actual, like a few of the number systems to see what's actually in play. So I don't check things out. So is this a relevant perspective from somebody who doesn't play the game? Yeah, it is. Is it a relevant perspective for someone who does play the game? No, it's not. People who play the game love it because it is intuitive. To a very, very large degree, it's intuitive and it's very complex. It's not trivial. It's a very, very difficult game. So I don't think that Ben was saying that the game was not complicated to play or difficult to play. I was thinking that he was thinking that that you could never learn the actual system because the system keeps on shifting on you all the time. And I think that's what he meant by Number Wang. So anyway, that's sort of where we are there. I would say that he is off-beam massively about this, but I can understand where he's coming from because there are a lot of numbers at play. Okay, inert state system. Let's get into this one here. So inert state, hang on, just have a quick drink. Inert state system does not appear to be a standard, widely recognised term with a single established definition. Good, I'm not an idiot again. The individual concepts are straightforward. An inert state is a condition in which something exists but is inactive, dormant, non-responsive, or unable to initiate change. To be honest, when Ben was saying an inert state system, my immediate thought went to inert gases, which are non-reactive. So I was actually assuming non-reactive. I mean, it says they're non-responsive. That's what I would understand them to be. A state system is a system in which something occupies defined states and can transition between them. So taken literally, an inert state system would describe a system where entities can enter states in which they remain present but do not actively participate or change until something causes a transition. This is where Ben was referring to tags or flags, being a switch on or off. So it's something applies or it doesn't. So for me, I wish he had just said it's got like a binary switch system where something is either on or off. And that's what I would have understood that. However, unlike terms like finite state machine, state transition, or idle state, inert state system isn't established technical terminology in this exact form. This is important here. If someone is presenting it as a recognized formal concept, I'd want to know their source or how they're defining it. Yes, I do. I do want to know that because it makes no sense at all. Definition with regard to game design. Again, this is a non-standard game design term. Oh, good. I'm not an idiot. I'm going to be saying this a lot. So I've been verb-wanged. I've been completely verb-wanged by BattleMode. So nonetheless, it describes a recognizable design pattern rather well. In games, I would interpret an inert state as a condition in which a game entity remains in play but produces little or no meaningful behavior until another event causes it to become active. I don't think that's what he means. For example, imagine a tactical unit has active, acts normally, stunned, cannot act, active, acts normally again. So while stunned, the unit still exists. Yeah, that's okay, I can see that. So while stunned, the unit still exists, but it can potentially be attacked, targeted, or affected by other mechanics, but isn't generating meaningful decisions itself. This is an inert state. I don't think it's what Ben meant, but this makes perfect sense to me. This is a useful distinction here because temporary incapacitation and a broader design problem. Hang on, there's a useful distinction here between temporary incapacitation and a broader design problem. A unit being stunned for one turn is deliberately inert and can create interesting tactics. But suppose a unit spends large portions of a battle unable to do anything useful because of the way the game system interact. You could reasonably describe that as a systematically inert, even though inert state system wouldn't be the conventional terminology. I don't think this is not what Ben was describing at all, I don't think. My head now immediately goes to, I think it was in Age of Wonders 3 or Age of Wonders 2, when you froze something, it was frozen for 3 turns. Meant that you basically couldn't do anything for 3 turns, I think it was. So it had like multiple turns where it actually couldn't interact, which was too long. And so Ben sees the game as dumbing down that system in Age of Wonders 4 to make it only last 1 turn. And so for him, that's a negative because it stops the player from being able to do things while it's frozen. For me, they've just rebalanced the game and made it a better game because of it. So another interpretation could involve game states rather than unit states. So a system might technically exist but spend most of the game doing nothing until a particular trigger occurs. For instance, normal combat, special condition occurs, system activates, condition disappears, system becomes inert again. So the important characteristics is that the system retains state but isn't currently generating activity or decisions. Okay, that's not really going to apply with what we're doing through here. So how well known is it? As a game design term, obscure and probably non-standard. Ben, please stop using this silly jargon that you use. I would not assume that two game designers using an inert state system necessarily mean the same thing. So it's confusing. It's a confusing term. There are several established concepts that could overlap with it depending upon context. So state machines, idle states, disabled states, incapacitation, stun, disabled mechanics, downtime, action denial, dormant systems. See, I'm thinking of it in terms of like where my head was at, inert gases, like doing nothing, non-reactive. In one sort of sense, which I see it as a bit different to this one. This one's actually seeing it in terms of making a system inert, Ben is not referring to that. Ben is thinking of binary switching for some reason and calling it inert state. So this is one. It's substantially different from something like action economy, where there is an established body of meaning. If you're working from a particular person's list of game design terminology, this may be actually terminology coined by that person to describe a phenomenon they've identified. If so, their definition should take precedence over the literal interpretation above. Well, I don't know. I'm assuming he's made it up. Application to Age of Wonders 4 combat. This combat becomes quite interesting when applied to Age of Wonders 4 because we can consider how much of a unit's existence during tactical combat is active versus inert. This is not what Ben's referring to. So a very simple example would be stunned. So a stunned unit, and there's also mobile and stuff like that as well. A stunned unit remains physically present on the battlefield, but its capacity to make decisions has temporarily been removed. In our informal definition, unit exists, but plus cannot act equals inert state. So this isn't what he's referring to. This is how I was. No, it wasn't even how I was interpreting it because I knew that there was going to be something more meaningful than just a stunned state. Like because he wouldn't. You can't argue that it's, I mean, all the games have usually got some sort of stunned state. But there's a more interesting way to apply the idea for Age of Wonders 4. Units waiting for their opportunity. Imagine a melee unit positioned several hexes away from the enemy. There are several abilities, retaliation attacks, enchantments, and other properties. But until the army makes contact, many of these systems effectively aren't doing anything. The player might simply move. Turn 1, move towards enemy. 2, turn, move towards enemy. 3, finally engage. That's about the timing, to be honest, with the units. For those first turns, much of the unit's combat design is effectively dormant. That isn't necessarily a problem. Positioning itself is gameplay. Very much so in Age of Wonders. If you move one unit to one hex where it can actually throw the whole combat and create a loss for you, it's that critical. It really is an incredible game in its depth. The definition would therefore be active positioning. So I'll move here so the enemy has to enter my zone of control and expose its flank. Yes, thank you, chat. My very, very good friend, ChatGPT. Versus inert movement. I can't do anything with this unit yet, so I'll move it forward. Can you look? Those can look almost identical on screen while representing very different amounts of player agency. Player agency is everything, and I find in most games, like I wish we were arguing these sorts of things. Player choice, player agency, strategic choices. Age of Wonders 4 excels in this stuff. So I don't know why Ben is just so negative about it. Defensive units provide another example. Suppose a shield unit's primary function is to stand somewhere and absorb attacks. I did try to explain this in our discussion. I think Ben understood this. That doesn't automatically make it inert. If positioning that unit changes enemy behaviour, protects adjacent units, creates zones of control, controls retaliation opportunities, or forces an opponent to choose different targets, then standing still is producing game state changes. Yes. This is where you can't just think in terms of attack when you're playing Age of Wonders 4. You have to think in terms of attack and defense with basic, with intuitive units. Like if it's a shield unit, it's got a massive circle above its head with a shield on it saying this is a good defensive unit. And if it defends, it's going to be helping those around it. Its inert state is what makes it so powerful. So that's active gameplay despite the absence of an attack. Conversely, and this is not what Ben's referring to, I know that. Conversely, if the optimal decision is simply put unit here, activate defense, wait, and there's little reason to reconsider that decision, then the unit could be described as spending significant time in an inert tactical state. So status effects and action denial, the concept becomes particularly relevant to Age of Wonders 4 control effects. So consider a hypothetical sequence. Turn 1, a unit is stunned. Turn 2, unit is frozen. Turn 3, unit is immobilized outside useful attack range. Turn 4, unit finally acts. And this is exactly the way that you structure your strategy when you're playing this game, because you've got to think these things through. Like, what's the chances of getting a stun? What's the chances of freezing it? And this means the unit can't actually act against you. The unit has technically participated in 4 turns of combat, but the player may only have made one meaningful decision with it. From an inert state perspective, therefore, would be interested in something slightly different from conventional balance. I'll try to skip past a lot of this because this is not what Ben was referring to. Ben was referring to very simplistic on-off switches for different things, which is not. And that's not an accurate thing about the game. That's where his head was at, I'm pretty sure. but it's not like that's not what the game is about. Anyway, what proportion of the user's time on the battlefield generates meaningful decisions for its controlling player? Yeah, blah blah blah. This is not really helping us. I'll skip past all of this. Okay, whether to think the term could be useful for analysing Age of Wonders 4. If I deliberately adopt a inert state system as an analytical label rather than pretending it's established terminology, I think the most useful definition, I should really, rather than pretending it's established terminology, I think the most useful definition for Age of Wonders 4 would be a combat condition in which a unit remains part of the tactical game state. No, this is not what Ben's referring to. I'm going to skip past this one. So let's go to the next one where Ben says that good game design. So from Ben's perspective, bad games have inert state systems, on-off switches type things and complexity. The reactive state system, and this is actually why when he was talking about random number generation of different sorts of things, he was referring to this as to why it would work in a reactive state system, but not in what he considers to be an inert state system. So in this case, so that's sort of why when he was talking RNG, he was actually referencing this and not referencing the actual, like he wasn't saying RNG is good in games. He was saying that game systems should be good to accommodate RNG. And I didn't get that at all, but that's actually, I think, where his argument was. So, reactive state system, a general definition. Unlike reactive system, which is an established terminology in computing and systems engineering, reactive state system is not a particularly standardized term in its exact form. Again, I'm not an idiot. Good. Reactive system is broadly a system that continuously responds to internal inputs or events rather than simply receiving an input, calculating something and finishing it. It maintains a state and reacts as circumstances change. So a useful simplified model is current state plus external event, reaction, new state. So, for example, a thermostat is reactive. So a room too cold, heater activates, temperature rises, heater switch turns off. Again, I don't think this is exactly what Ben's referring to at all, actually. The important feature is that the system's behaviour depends both on what's happened and what state it's already in. So there is legitimate technical theory behind the words, even though reactive state system isn't itself a universally defined term. With regards to game design, this is the important thing. This is why I wanted to define it in terms of game design. Okay, this is much more applicable to games than inert state system. Although, again, I wouldn't call reactive state system an established game design term. Again, I'm vindicated. What did I call it? The verb wang is in full effect. So for our purposes, a useful definition could be a system in which the entity's current state determines how it automatically or conditionally responds to actions taken elsewhere in the game. A crucial difference is between acting and reacting. A normal turn action might be my turn, I select unit, I attack enemy. A reactive system might be my turn, I place unit into a particular state, then enemy acts, my unit state causes a response. So again, I don't think Ben's referring to this because Age of Wonders 4 has a lot of these sorts of things where you actually do exactly this, where you make the decision not to attack, but you put it into a state where it can then react. So and again, I don't know why Ben is just so anti what Age of Wonders 4 is and does, because it is as a tactical, and we're only talking about the tactical aspect. We're not even talking about the strategic layer, which is also brilliant. But the tactical layer is it is hard. It's hard to play because you have to make so many decisions. Ben seemed to sort of think you just did what you did and it didn't matter. That's not, and because he was sort of saying that. That's my understanding of what he was saying, was that you knew before you went into battle who was going to win and why. That's not the case at all, not even slightly. Depending. If you completely in any game, if you've got complete power imbalance in a combat, yes, you're going to win. That's just the way it works. So examples of extremely common in games: Overwatch, opportunity attacks, retaliation, counterattacks, interception, guard modes, traps, conditional buffs, and triggered abilities. Now, let's put it back into the terminology that where Ben was using Dominions 6 as an example, where there's a lot of different systems that work, versus a game like Age of Wonders, where you've really only got hit points, armor, and resistance as sort of like the three elements that are sort of at play, with lots and lots of tags around it. So I'm trying to sort of be fair to what Ben's trying to get his point across through here. Those other games don't really use these. Age of Wonders 4 does. And so, yes, they're different systems. That's why I don't think you can compare the two games. And I don't think you can actually say that one system is better than the other. Like, they do what they do very, very well. And so, so again, Overwatch, opportunity attacks, retaliation, counterattacks. Now, first of all, a lot of these things you can't do in Dominions because it's a auto battler. He mentioned Eodor. Eodor, from what I can remember, doesn't have Overwatch. I may be wrong. It's been a long time since I played it. Opportunity attacks. I know that there is zone of control where you can sort of move out. Retaliation. I don't know if it has that. I mean, that's the thing again. All of this stuff is describing, Age of Wonders 4, and not the other games that he was sort of explaining. Anyway, let's keep on going. These mechanics make the opponent's turn particularly interactive because decisions made previously continue to affect what happens. So again, this is describing Age of Wonders 4, but I don't think Ben is using this in the terminology that he thinks it means. This is also an important distinction between a reaction and a reactive state. If a unit always counterattacks whenever attacked, that's a reactive mechanic, which is what Age of Wonders has. So if I deliberately put a unit into guard and being in guard changes how it responds to future events, that's closer to what I call a reactive state system. So not just a reactive state on a unit. How well known is it? I classified as reactive state, very well established terminology, reactive system, which I do understand, reactive mechanic / gameplay, commonly understood in game design, yes. Reactive state system, uncommon, non-standard terminology. Ben, you've got to stop using this verb wang. So unlike number wang, the underlying here isn't obscure at all. The exact phrase is related established terminology includes reaction mechanics, triggered events, interrupts, overwatch, opportunity attacks, counterattacks, event-driven systems, state machines, and conditional actions, which is describing Age of Wonders 4. If someone is deliberately contrasting the inert state system with reactive state system, I suspect that they have created their own taxonomy, which is exactly what Ben has done. In this case, the pairing actually starts to make more sense. So inert state, unit waits and does nothing until its next activation. Reactive state, unit waits but can respond to events occurring while waiting. This is not what Ben means. This is not what he means at all. That could be a useful distinction, even though the terminology isn't standard. This is again the reactive state in this situation is exactly what Age of Wonders 4 does. Exactly. The one thing Age of Wonders 4 doesn't have is Overwatch, so it doesn't actually have a trigger for Overwatch, which I'm happy with that. Like it works beautifully within its own system. Application to Age of Wonders 4. So I don't know if this will be all that meaningful. This concept maps very naturally into Age of Wonders 4 tactical combat. Age of Wonders 4 already contains several mechanics that could reasonably be described as reactive systems. The most obvious is retaliation. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be helpful. Conceptually, unit has retaliation available. Enemy attacks unit, retaliation condition triggered. Unit automatically attacks enemy, retaliation resource consumed. Yes, it's got typically, and you can actually buff this up a little bit, but typically units will have one retaliation attack against melee attacks. So this means that unit isn't completely inactive during the opponent's turn if current state affects what the opponent can safely do. And the last point is important. Reaction matters before it occurs. Suppose my unit will retaliate if you attack it. The retaliation itself might deal 12 damage, but its actual gameplay effect is potentially much larger than those 12 points because you know the retaliation will happen. You might therefore choose not to attack. So the reactive system creates what we would call a threat. Attack this unit, suffer retaliation. That threat changes your decision space. This is where reactive states become particularly interesting in tactical games. So this is perfect. And again, the masterclass tier is Age of Wonders. It does this beautifully, like where you actually the positioning is so important. Like, I can't stress that enough. I honestly can't think of another game where positioning your units is just so critical to actually be able to use this sort of strategy when you're playing it. And it's not unintuitive. It really isn't. Like, despite what Ben says, it is not unintuitive. So it says Overwatch is an even clearer example. Range units in Age of Wonders 4 provide an especially useful example through Overwatch. Rather than activate Archer, shoot enemy Archer, it becomes inert. Then it can effectively establish a reactive threat. So activate Archer, establish Overwatch. Enemy unit may trigger attack. I've never seen it do that. This is bullshit. ChatGPT, you've let me down. Now, do I have to mean that all the other things that you've said is something that is actually bullshit as well? Is Ben actually using common terms that I just have and that I am completely unintelligent and have never heard of them before? I don't know, but this is actually inaccurate. So this unfortunately AI does this a lot. I can actually call it on this and say, hey, Age of Wonders 4 doesn't have an Overwatch system. I might do it because I think this is the last point that I actually had. Inert state, I finish acting, nothing further happens. Yeah, reactive state, I finish acting, but conditions are established. Zones of control. Okay, so Age of Wonders 4 zone of control and retaliation mechanics also fit nicely into this analysis. It really does. So a melee unit's position creates consequences for enemy movement and engagement. Merely standing somewhere can therefore establish a reactive tactical state. And this is actually particularly where you can actually position a unit in amongst mages, and they can't use their ability. If you pop a unit in amongst multiple mages and put it into a defensive mode, it will then be looking all the way around it, which means that it's actually interacting with all of this. Like, the zone of control extends everywhere. It's not just the front-facing bits. And these, again, are intuitive things in the game. So if a melee unit has done that, all those mages can't do their spell casting until either that melee unit is killed or they get to move away. Something has to go and trigger the attack, the retaliation attack of that melee unit, to then allow the others to move away. So again, there's so much tactical thinking in the game. It's just incredible. That means position, establish threat, army responds to threat, battlefield develops, rather than simply position, wait for next turn. Again, this is describing Age of Wonders 4. This is what makes this is really interesting, because it really simply puts into perspective why Age of Wonders 4 is just such a good game. Thanks, Ben, for using this verb wang on me. It's made things much clearer. So this connects directly to our previous discussion of inert states. The unit standing still isn't necessarily inert if that position is generating reactive consequences, which is what Age of Wonders 4 is full of. So reactive states can create tactical geometry. All right, this is probably the most interesting Age of Wonders 4 application. Imagine 3 units protecting a mage. Without significant reactive mechanics, the opponent's primarily asks, which unit can I reach and how much damage can I do? With strong reactive systems, the question becomes, if I move here, what will react? Perhaps move through Hex A, Overwatch triggers. Attack Unit B, retaliation triggers. Move past Unit C, opportunity attack triggers. Attack Mage, adjacent defender intercepts. The battlefield therefore contains a network of potential consequences. Again, it's intuitive. When you look at this one, you can just look at the layout and think, okay, that guy's protecting these guys. He's got a shield on him. He's giving them extra bonuses. Can I stop him from using his shield wall to make it easier for me to attack the mages? The player isn't merely looking at where units currently are. They're looking at what those units will do if a particular conditions occur. It creates a kind of invisible tactical landscape. But there is a potential downside. Here we go. This is purely for battle mode. So the reactive state don't automatically create better tactical gameplay. Imagine 6 enemy units, each possessing several conditional reactions. Moving one unit might cause Overwatch retaliation effects, adjacent unit triggers, status effects, secondary ability, another conditional effect. The player can reach a point where predicting the consequences becomes difficult. Well, not really, I don't think. I think this is a good... I find I can usually predict where a unit's going to be moving, where an enemy will position their unit for the best effect, either for the current attack or for future attacks. And I think that this is sort of like this is where the more you play the game, the more you instinctively get to understand, oh, okay, this unit's moved there for this reason. And again, this is just like it's one of these, you don't just launch into Age of Wonders 4 and think it's an easy game. It is a complex game that the more time you spend with it, the more fun it is, and the more you instinctively understand it, which is exactly what Ben was arguing that it wasn't. So again, I don't know why. Okay, so interesting that connectivity comes straight back to your first term. Here we go. So it says the player can reach a point where predicting the consequences become difficult, and interestingly, that connects straight back to your first term. Reactive state system plus too many interacting modifiers, potential number wang. All that's saying, and we'll just keep on reading, but for me, what that's saying is, oh, it's too hard for me because there's too much going on. Yes, it's a hard game, but this is not what Ben means either. I'm pretty sure this is not what, see, this is where my head was at. I was hearing him saying it's just full of random numbers that are being thrown at shit, and nothing makes sense. You can't understand it. You got to spend. Well, he went from saying there were 500 tags you had to look at to I think 2,000 tags you had to look at to 1 billion tags you had to look at. I think that was a progression that he was using trying to get across these inert state tags, which I think are just, and I will show an example actually. I'll play a little bit of the game. It's you're already nearly an hour, so we might as well make it a little bit longer than this, just to at least sort of show. I'll try to show early game battles versus late game battles, just so you can see the degree that the game changes. Actually, no, there is one more term after this, which is so we'll go through that as well. So the mechanics can, so where did we get up to? The mechanics may individually be understandable, but their interactions can become opaque. So I don't find that at all. This is another possible problem, loss of agency. Now, actually, I will say, yes, it does come in when you first actually hit a battle that you're not where they've got like a buff that you're not expecting to see. As soon as you see it, think, oh, shit, I've actually completely miscalculated. You can then do the save scum, which the game encourages, because it is hard. And it's a game that you learn more by save scumming in Age of Wonders than any other game because of the complexity of the game and the difficulty of the game. Like once you sort of figure out, okay, I've got to approach this differently because of this particular buff that the whole enemy army is using, as an example. So if too much combat happens automatically through reactions, the player can spend less time actually making decisions. A sophisticated reaction system therefore needs to make the decision to establish the reactive system state meaningful. For example, do I attack now, or do I sacrifice my immediate attack to enter Overwatch? That's an interesting decision because the player is effectively exchanging certain immediate value for conditional future value. Again, that's very much a choice that you need to make as you play the game. An especially useful Age of Wonders 4 interpretation. For analysing Age of Wonders 4 combat, I'd define reactive state system as a combat system in which a unit can enter or maintain a state that causes it to respond to actions or events occurring outside its normal activation. Examples would include Overwatch, retaliation. I'm not sure why it keeps on saying Overwatch. I'm going to have to call it up on that one. Opportunity attacks and other triggered responses. And paired with the previous terms, we now have the potential useful analysis distinction. So state, we've got inert and reactive now, so it's made a little graph here, a little table. So unit has finished its immediate action, yes and yes. Can influence subsequent actions, so inert is little or not at all, or B, reactive is yes through threats and triggers, which is exactly what Age of Wonders 4 does. But this is not the terminology that Ben was using, so he's even using even more obscure language than even this one. The distinction can actually be quite valuable when analysing Age of Wonders 4. The deeper design question then becomes, after a unit has acted, does it become tactically irrelevant until its next activation, or does it continue participating in the decision space through reactive threats? This is not what Ben means. If we were arguing this, I think he would even agree that yes, the units have a reactive state system that actually is extremely strong and extremely viable to actually make use of through player agency. So I don't think he'd argue. I don't think anyone could argue against that. But this is not what Ben's referring to when he mentions reactive state system. Verdict on terminology: reactive state system itself is uncommon, non-standard, but unlike inert state system, its underlying concepts are very well established in both systems design and game mechanics, but not the way Ben's applied it, to be honest. Power fantasy is the next one here. So a general definition, because he mentioned what Ben was ultimately trying to get to, I think, was that the the game has been dumbed down. This is actually his, not my take on it. He thinks the game has been dumbed down to the point where the power fantasy, and we'll get to what that terminology means, has been obliterated through number wang and the inert state system to the point where players lose interest in the game. I think that's what he's actually trying to argue. So that's where my head got to in the end, was that this is when you combine those little terms, as opposed to a reactive state game like Eodor or Dominions, where there's lots of things happening that you have to learn beforehand, but you then understand afterwards to a degree, I would say. As that being the opposite, means that because of the RNG being able to impact what's going on, a powerful unit can do massive things within that system, as opposed to Age of Wonders 4, where the system protects like insta-kills to a degree. Now, that's actually not strictly true either. There are insta-kills in Age of Wonders 4 for certain very, very powerful units, which give you your power fantasy. So I'll argue it. I'll just put that out there. Anyway. Okay, so power fantasy is a fantasy or imagined scenario in which a person experiences an unusually high degree of power, competence, control, influence, or capacity. It doesn't necessarily mean literally physical power. The fantasy might involve being an unbeatable warrior, a brilliant commander, an immensely wealthy ruler, a master strategist, superhero, political leader, or someone capable of overcoming obstacles that would normally be overwhelming. A useful broad definition is a fantasy centered on experiencing exponential agency, capability, or dominance. So the term is sometimes used negatively, suggesting wish fulfillment, but is not inherently negative. Much popular fiction is deliberately built around power fantasies. That's true. That's very true. Definition with regard to game design. Power fantasy is a genuine and widely used concept in game design and game criticism. Oh, maybe I'm as dumb as what I came across. I hadn't heard of power fantasy before, so my IQ has dropped 10 points. So in games, it generally describes the experience the game enables the player to have being unusually powerful, capable, or influential. Importantly, power fantasy does not equal simply making the player statistically powerful. A game can give the player enormous numerical bonuses without necessarily feeling powerful. Conversely, a difficult game can deliver a strong power fantasy if success makes the player feel exceptionally competent. There are therefore several ways games can generate power fantasy. So one is mechanical power. The player deals enormous damage, commands huge armies, or possesses abilities unavailable to ordinary characters. And this is very much Dominions. We're talking, like Dominions does this. This is as a great example. Dominions is a great example of different power fantasies all at play at the same time, basically, with different types of units. And this does describe this extremely well. So I think that's where Ben was coming from that aspect. And that RNG aids the power fantasy. I think that's what he was talking about. Another is expressive power. The player has many ways of solving problems and can impose their chosen strategy on the game. Another is mastery-based power. The player begins relatively weak, but eventually understands the game systems well enough to achieve outcomes that previously seemed impossible. So, and another is presentation. Animation, sound, visual effects, and enemy reactions communicate that something enormously powerful just happened. Ideally, these reinforce one another. So Ben is saying that Age of Wonders 4 has nerfed itself to having power fantasy being non-existent. I disagree with that, but I can see an argument for that. This is the only thing that out of all this that was spoken about that I can say, yeah, okay, I can argue that point, and actually someone could actually probably change my mind on this one. I personally don't see it, but anyway, this is where it is. How well known is it? Very well known. Again, I've just dropped another 5 IQ points, I think. Unlike our previous 2 terms, I wouldn't put any qualification around this one. Power fantasy is established terminology in discussion of video games, RPGs, action games, strategy games, character design, and game criticism. Oh, there's another 2 IQ points gone. I've never heard of it before. It's also used outside games actually, if we did a number wang on how my IQ has gone up and down during this thing, that would be interesting. I think we'd be at plus 10 now. I think maybe this is bringing me down a little bit. So I should have little numbers, appearing above my head. Like it's also used outside games in discussions of literature, film, and popular culture. There can certainly be disagreement about precisely what constitutes a power fantasy, but the term itself is mainstream. So in Age of Wonders 4 is particularly interesting because Power Fantasy is arguably built into its overall progression structure. Well, Ben would say it isn't. You don't merely develop an empire, you progressively transform your ruler, race and armies through tomes, transformations, enchantments, heroes' abilities, equipment and increasingly powerful magic. Yeah, this is all true. So an army that begins the game relatively conventional can eventually become something extraordinary. Well, Ben has even admitted he doesn't finish these games. He starts them but doesn't finish them. So he never gets deep enough in to actually experience this. So in combat, that progression can provide a strong power fantasy. The transformation of ordinary units, consider a relatively basic unit early in the game. Its tactical identity might initially be straightforward: move, attack, defend, retaliate. As the player empire develops, the same general class of unit can accumulate enchantments, transformations and bonuses. This is where Ben was thinking the game would have been better using the mod system from Planetfall, where it goes on a per unit basis rather than on a per class basis. But in Age of Wonders 4, they did actually pull back on the mod system. I think you could also argue with that versus the other. I can see why, of course, they've done it, whether it's global. I do also particularly like the mod system, and I would say that I probably would like to have seen a version with the mod system rather than the class system applied. So I would agree that is something that would be an interesting thing, where you've actually got individual soldiers, which you sort of have with your heroes. There's another thing, actually, when we talk about, just going off on a bit of a tangent, when you play Elemental, and the game, I don't think the game can be compared really to Elemental, but Elemental's really interesting because you have your classes of the different types of units, then they level up with experience and do different things like that, like they do in all these games. But what's interesting about, particularly about Elemental's combat, is that you can actually buff your individual stacks or individual units with equipment. So you can actually change the equipment manually from things that you find. It's not just for heroes, it's for individual units as well. And I really like that. I would love to see that in Age of Wonders 4, actually. So that would be the only thing that I would be thinking, yeah, actually doing that would then give you this power fantasy even more. And so Ben's saying the power fantasy has been eroded because of the nerfing of the systems. I don't see that, but I can see that it could be argued. So the thematic message becomes, eventually attacks may inflict additional damage types, additional status effects, benefit from racial transformations, receive support bonuses and interact with other abilities. See, for Ben, this is not a progression system where you're actually experiencing a story as you go through and actually building up this narrative around your actual faction that you're playing, where it evolves slowly over time to actually have other abilities. That's how I see it. Ben sees it as more number wang being thrown at these units that have no instinctive or understand, like we've got no instinctive understanding of what's going on, which is completely inaccurate. So the thematic message becomes, these aren't ordinary soldiers anymore. These are my magically transformed soldiers. And so, and that's like, I think what Ben would sort of say is, yeah, but it's your whole army, whereas really you want to have one or two units that you focus on. And I would say, yes, that's a good point. Finally, I got some agreement there. I mean, it would be more impactful if you actually did have, like in Elemental, if you could actually have one unit or a few different units that you actually buff right up, that are just common units. I think that's one thing. But I think Ben was also talking about the heroes being a bit underwhelming as well. But that's also not true. Anyway, let's go into it. They can be particularly effective strategy game power fantasy because the player isn't simply acquired a powerful unit. They've built the system that makes the unit powerful. And so this, I think, is where Ben's lost the plot a little bit in terms of the progression. He sees this as number wang in Age of Wonders 4, but thinks it's great in every other game. So again, I think you've got a blind spot there, Ben. Heroes and rulers. Heroes provide a more conventional RPG-style power fantasy. A ruler can accumulate equipment and abilities until they are capable of dramatically experiencing tactical battle. This produces an easy, recognisable progression. Early game, my ruler is important combat unit. Later game, my ruler can determine the outcome of battles. Now, this is there's an important design balance here, though. Now, both those things, early game versus late game, when we compare the games that Ben was talking about, like Dominion 6, the Eodor, and also Age of Wonders 4, I would put Elemental. Let's just talk about Elemental in there as well. All 4 games do this. It's like, so they all do it to a degree. Age of Wonders 4 arguably does it to lesser degree. And if you're coming from a Dominion 6 background, you're going to be used to really focusing on building super combatants, which is the terminology they use for like extremely powerful leaders that go into battle essentially on their own. Actually, they don't have to go on their own, but they're just extremely powerful units that can actually destroy armies. And also thugs. Thug units are lower level units that can go in on their own and destroy armies, but also a little bit like they're cheaper usually than super combatants. So they're sort of things that you can pump out a few of them. But in both instances, sending one of those into battle, you've got a lot at stake when you do it, because you've actually had to give it all this equipment. You've had to build it all up. You've had to sort of basically, it's a big investment to get a super combatant in Dominions and a thug as well. It's actually, it's maybe a bit more trivial because you often start with like a big unit anyway, and then just move your buffs in around it. It's extremely, extremely good in Dominions. Like it's probably, I would have to say it's probably the best of any game that I've come across where that power fantasy really kicks in for different units and not just the units, but the different heroes. So I think that's what Ben was getting at when he was talking about stuff. And there is a bigger RNG, or there is not a big RNG, because it came across that he was saying there's a big RNG thing, which was fantastic. That's not what he meant, I'm sure. I think it just means that the RNG, because there's so many systems at play, that the RNG elements sort of end up making a pure outcome into a bit of an unknown a little bit. So I think that's where his head was at, to be honest. Anyway, so yes, I would concede that Dominion 6 does a much, much better job of building those units than Age of Wonders 4. But Age of Wonders 4 has now got it's been improved over the time, and it's got a very, very involved RPG sort of power fantasy aspect to it. Like, in fact, you have to make an important decision fairly on in the game. Do I make my commander into something that's going to be an incredible combatant later on in the game, or do I make it into more of a support type unit where it's not as powerful, but the units around it become more powerful? These are all important design like important game decisions when you're playing the game. Anyway, I don't see this as a negative in any sense with Age of Wonders 4. Okay, so the ruler becomes so powerful that the rest of the army becomes irrelevant. The game may successfully deliver a hero power fantasy while weakening the army command fantasy. Neither is inherently better. They're just different. They're simply different experiences. Yes, and look, for Age of Wonders 4, it's not about the having a superhero. You do come across them. Some of the AI builds will actually end up with a combatant that is just so powerful that like you've got to spend the whole army just to bring one unit down. So it does exist in the game. It's just that I tend not to play it that way. I tend to prefer my heroes to be more support than to be frontline super combatants. But you can build them still. Combat spells. Combat magic is perhaps the clearest Age of Wonders 4. Are we in Age of Wonders 4? Here we are. Okay. So sorry, I was thinking, oh, wow, this all applies to Age of Wonders 4 because we're in that section. Combat magic is perhaps the clearest Age of Wonders 4 example. A conventional attack says, this soldier attacks that soldier. A major combat spell can instead say, I, as ruler, alter the battlefield. That difference in scale is significant. Damaging several enemy units, summoning creatures, dramatically buffing your army, or applying effects across the battlefield reinforces the idea that the player isn't merely commanding troops. They are an enormously powerful magical ruler. Ben doesn't get this at all. Like, he doesn't. Like, if he reads that, he's saying, "Oh, this is just bullshit. It's more bullshit like the Overwatch aspect." It's not. It's not. So Age of Wonders 4 can potentially operate with multiple nested power fantasies. Unit level, my soldiers are powerful. Hero level, my champion wizard is powerful. Army level, I've constructed a powerful army. Empire level, I've constructed a magically transformed civilization. Player level, I understand these systems well enough to combine them into something extremely effective. My God, this is so on target here. And really, I think that Ben is probably in tears now reading this stuff, thinking, oh my God, I've made a massive faux pas criticising Age of Wonders 4 when it really is the best game ever made. The last one is particularly important for a strategy game. There we go. And this is all applied. All of this is applied. Okay, you could then argue the mod system made individual soldiers more powerful than Age of Wonders 4, like the mod system from Planet 4. Yes, it did. But it's just different. So you're more working in this empire level and army level instead of on the unit level, which you were in Planet 4. So you could argue and say, oh, well, but you can't say that's destroyed the game or it's dumbed it down to the point where it's just meaningless or anything like that. That's not true. Anyway, power fantasy and synergy. Age of Wonders 4 combat system can generate power fantasy through synergy rather than raw statistics. So ability A applies a status effect. Unit B receives a bonus against enemies with that status. Ability C spreads the status to nearby units, and spell D amplifies the resulting damage. This, for me, I love this about the game, and for Ben, I'm assuming this is number one. For me, so this is, I think, a fundamental appreciation of what the game does, and also personal personal preference when you play a game, which is fine. Like people, I know a lot of people hate how complex tactical battles are in Age of Wonders 4. I think that it's interesting to sort of, like, for me, I always try to get in people's heads as to why they struggle with something like Age of Wonders 4. What is it that actually turns them off it? And if I was trying to analyse what Ben has been saying, he's basically saying all of the systems like this, which sounds so exciting to me. For someone like Ben, it's just a whole lot of fluff that is intangible, that is hard to understand, is not intuitive, and so it just becomes a meaningless exercise in frustration. That's how I would assume that his head is reacting. For me, like as somebody, because what I always try to focus on with my videos is how can I present the game for somebody with that mindset to make it make more sense. And so for my approach to that would be to try to break it down and into what is intuitive and what you do need to focus on, because that's how, when I play the game, I instinctively know a lot of the stuff that's going on, but I need to find out what the interplay of these things are. It doesn't take long to do it, but you need to know where to look, and maybe that's the key for someone like Ben, who just really doesn't put the time into it to actually get to the point where it does become instinctive. Infinity None may be extraordinarily powerful, but the player discovers a combination and wipes out an enemy formation. The resulting feeling can be, I built this. Yeah, and this is exactly what, like when Ben was saying that it doesn't have this sort of stuff in it, I'm thinking, you've obviously not played the game to any sort of depth, because it's full of it. It's absolutely like this. If you attack, let's just say you've got different units that can attack a unit, and one is going to apply burning to it, the other one's got an effect where it actually does more damage if a unit is burning. If you do in the opposite order, you then end up nullifying your attack dramatically. If you sort of know, okay, I need to shoot it with the mage first, get it burning, and then attack it with this, with this particular guy that's got an ability against burning units. And you learn that as you play the game, because you're involved with your units, so you're actually getting that feel anyway. So it's coming in, and from the enemy perspective, yeah, you won't see it as much, but often, like, that's why you've got the replay. You think, oh shit, how they do that? Go back, have a look. Think, okay, well, I think I can counter that this way. So then just do a save scum, replay it, and sort it out, and learn from it and enjoy it. Like, it's, I've got to say that, I've always save scum Age of Wonders games, and always, just because it's so complex, right from number one. Number one, I think it was hard to save scum. Number two, you had the quick save type things, but then number three, Age of Wonders 3, they brought in the ability to actually just replay the battles, which I think was great. So that's a different form of power fantasy from simply being handed a unit with 500 damage. So in systematic power fantasy, power arising from understanding and exploiting interacting mechanics for a strategy game that can be extremely satisfying. So power fantasy versus challenge. An important distinction is that power fantasy does not require the game to be easy. In fact, challenge can strengthen it. If my incredibly powerful army destroys a trivial opponent, I may feel powerful. But if my carefully constructed army defeats another extremely dangerous army through clever use of abilities, positioning, and synergies, I may feel both powerful and skillful. And this is what I get out of the game. But I can also see why other people don't, to be honest. The two experiences are different. The game made me powerful versus I made myself powerful by understanding the game. Age of Wonders 4 can potentially provide both. I think that's very true. Where it becomes particularly relevant to combat design, this is a potential tension between power fantasy and tactical readability. There we go. We've got a sort of one of the loose terms that Ben has used. Suppose a late game unit has 3 transformations plus 5 enchantments plus racial traits plus hero bonuses plus tome abilities plus status interactions plus several damage types. It may be enormously powerful, but if the player has no longer understands why it is powerful, something interesting happens. The intended experience might be, look at my incredible army I've created, but the actual experience might become, there are about 15 icons underneath this unit, and apparently it does 47 damage now, which is where I think Ben's getting at. For him, it's not 15 icons. It's what was it, 1 billion in the end? I think it was 500, 2,000, then 1 billion, and because I did listen back to what he was saying, which brings it. But he means, yeah, you've got a like a spaghetti of tags, which become meaningless. Which brings us back to our earlier concept. Power fantasy can collide with number wang. There we go, Ben. You can frame that and put that up there. The numbers demonstrate that the unit has become powerful, but the complexity can weaken the player's sense of authorship over the power. I would say that Dominions, when you build a super combatant, all you're doing is playing with the same numbers through a complex system. So it's not nowhere near as not any different in how intuitive or unintuitive it is compared to Age of Wonders 4. So I don't see why somebody with that enjoys deep strategy games would see this as any sort. Like, I just don't see the issue there. I really just don't think Ben's played the game enough. Reactive systems can reinforce power fantasy too. Our previous term also connects nicely. Imagine placing an elite unit into a position where enemies are reluctant to approach because of retaliation zones or control of other reactive abilities. The unit hasn't attacked anyone yet. Nevertheless, the player can feel its power because the opponent has to respect its presence. It's arguably a more sophisticated expression of power than simply increasing damage. The battlefield effectively says, you cannot safely go there because my unit controls that space. This is what Age of Wonders 4 is all about. Holding back outside of dangerous territory, recognising what units are going to provide that dangerous territory. Again, it's simple to do that one. Very simple to see what that dangerous territory is, and then making the best use of it. And then something might happen where the enemy unit has got like some sort of phase ability that then suddenly negates all of your careful planning. If it destroys your army, then save scum and make use of that information. I love it. So Battlefield effectively says you can, because it controls the space. That is power expressed through tactical influence. This is what Age of Wonders 4, because the positioning is just so important, this is what the game is all about. A useful Age of Wonders 4 definition. For our analysis, I define Power Fantasy Age of Wonders 4 combat as the degree to which the game's mechanics, progression, and presentation allow the player to experience the ruler, units, army, or strategic choice as exceptionally capable and influential. Now, I think Ben would say this has been nerfed, and so it's no longer the RPG experience that they were hoping for. I still experience this, and I'd separate it into two specifically useful categories. Granted power fantasy, my units are powerful because the game has given me powerful abilities and statistics, or earned a systemic power fantasy. So my units are powerful because I understood the systems and deliberately created combinations that made them powerful. Yes, this is when you play the game, and actually understand it and get into it. That's what you're playing. Age of Wonders 4 does contain both. It does. Interesting design question isn't simply, does Age of Wonders 4 let the player become powerful? Clearly it does. A more powerful question for analysing its combat system is, does the player understand and feel responsible for the power they are exercising? So I'll just read that again. Does the player understand and feel responsible for the power they are exercising? That distinction becomes particularly relevant in a game with as many stacking transformations, enchantments, buffs, status effects, and synergies, number wang, as Age of Wonders 4. Verdict on terminology. Very well known and established. Unlike inert state systems and reactive state systems, power fantasy is absolutely normal terminology to encounter in discussions of game design. Okay, so that's one that I hadn't heard of before, but I do stand corrected on the terminology. But I do also argue that Age of Wonders 4 still has this, and I don't think it's been simplified or nerfed to the point where it's a meaningless game at all. It's for me, it's the most tactically rewarding and complex game that I play, and I play some complex games. Anyway, so GPT can make mistakes. Check important info. Let's actually write this question. Right, so I've just written, you mentioned Overwatch with Age of Wonders 4. Are you sure that's in the game? I thought it didn't use an Overwatch system. That's what it says. Okay, so yes, you're correct. I was wrong to describe Age of Wonders 4 as having an Overwatch system. Thanks for catching that. I checked this specifically because I don't want to compound the mistakes. Age of Wonders 4 has retaliation attacks, zones of control, and opportunity attacks, but it doesn't have a conventional ranged Overwatch. Okay, so opportunity attacks are probably what it's considering to be Overwatch, where a ranged unit is placed on watch and automatically fires when an enemy moves through. The official description characterises combat simply as turn-based tactical combat, while player discussions of Age of Wonders 4 specifically describe retaliation/opportunity attack behaviour rather than ranged Overwatch. I suspect I inadvertently imported the concept from Age of Wonders Planetfall, where Overwatch is. Yes, that's true. It's true. Whereas, and maybe that's something that again Ben's thinking, well, why nerf that back out? You know, again I know that the developers really, really focus on not trying to make the game dumb, not trying to make it simple. They're trying to get balance and good balance. And this is the only game I play, and Planetfall was the same basically, where I didn't actually have to use mods. All the other Age of Wonders games, except for the first one, because mods weren't really around for that one much. But every like Age of Wonders 2 and 3, I had heavily modded because I needed to fix things. Age of Wonders 4, I don't have to. And again, they make these. I think you've got to allow a developer to analyze and what's going on with a game and make improvements for the next game, which is what I think they've done that really, really well. And you can argue about little things, but every time they bring out a DLC, they bring out a big free update as well for correcting little things or for making things work better. The game is a beautiful game, and it's just gotten better and better and better over time, like dramatically so. It's almost to the point where every time they bring out a DLC, the actual free update that comes with it is as strong as the DLC, and the DLCs for Age of Wonders 4 have just been phenomenal. Okay, so it means I should correct part of my reactive state system answer for Age of Wonders 4. The better examples are retaliation and opportunity attacks. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, guys, that's, I don't know if I should show the game. What are we up to? We're up to an hour and a half now. I hope this puts things in perspective. I'm not trying to rag on Ben. I was genuinely trying to get an understanding. I do feel a bit vindicated that it was word salad, but I think that Ben, in his own head, had a very clear idea of what that meant. For me, it meant nothing. So that was, and I think that because of that, we were working on different planes of existence. So I was down with the troops, thinking in terms of player experience. Ben was up in the clouds, thinking in terms of game philosophy. And I think, and I'm not saying that in any sort of, with any sort of charge in it. I think that he was actually looking at the overall broad game mechanics and how it was applied through definitions of different sorts of systems and things like that, and if the game is failing the player base because of these philosophy decisions, whereas I'm just purely interested in terms of what's the player experience like. And so I think we're coming at it from very, very different perspectives. I hope that makes sense. I don't think I'll show examples. I will, of course, be playing the game a lot. I will be probably doing live streams predominantly on my second @Das Tactic Live channel when I do Age of Wonders. I did one yesterday, but I forgot to turn it on YouTube. I will show you. Hang on. Yeah, this is my live stream area. You can see a Spider Queen, Age of Wonders 4 story time. I was playing one of the story realms, which I never play, and this is actually the conclusion. So I've played this game now. I do play Age of Wonders through predominantly to conclusion because it does change over the course of the game. So we've got this one is, and maybe I will just sort of show like the difference between early game and late game. I might do that. So this one is unlisted, and actually what I do with these sorts of things now is that I actually leave them as unlisted after I've done the live stream, but I do them live. In this case, I had it unlisted the whole time, so 0 views. But it is there. If you're interested in trying to find it, there is a playlist for Age of Wonders with 30. It's only 13 videos to go through the whole story of what actually happened through here. So if I just go into this one through this other side, oops, hang on. Where is it? That's that's setting it all up. If I go and click on that one, nope, that's still the same. That one, nope, still the same. Anyway, it's that one. Watch on YouTube, yeah. So this is this essentially is going to be like it's a playlist essentially of one of the story realms, which goes through. So there is a playlist there on YouTube that you'll be able to go and find. And so there's only 13 episodes. The last one was literally played yesterday. Maybe I will show just to give you an idea as to whether make up your own mind. Is the game overly complex or not? Oh yeah, there's the videos. So they all sort of head on down here. Typically around about 2.5 to 3 hours each. And then the last one yesterday was the final episode where the final battle takes place. So I'll try to. There's certainly been some battles in here which have been really, really tough, like really hard. In this last episode, I was very, very powerful by that stage. My power fantasy was fully realized, and not just through heroes, but also through extremely powerful mistling warriors. Anyway, it's sort of it was really, really fun. I had a great time with this, I've got to say. You can see there I've got the Alkins. These guys just kept on coming back, stronger and stronger. Alkins again, trying to kill them off. I think that this episode here is actually where I get smashed by this other faction that I was expecting that I was going to be able to dominate, and so I had to retreat back and sort of cobble things together. It was again, it's such a cool game. It's not one-sided. It really, things make a massive difference here. I'll see if I can load in something and just show you typically what happens with a combat. I'll just try to quickly get into combat. We're at turn 12. This is I just loaded in an old save. I can't remember what this was. There's a camp there, so we'll go and kill that camp off. I need to be within 4 with my different units to be able to then go and attack them. So let's just go and do that. The little icons mean that there's no hero with this particular unit. This one's taken some damage at some point. These guys are ruled by a hero. So Sapio the Believer is the hero in charge of tier 1s and 2 units. Tier 1s and 2 units are nice and simple to make use of. And then we've got our leader here, Sir Scrap Bone Mauler, along with a tier 3 unit, which is the only tricky unit in the army, along with the heroes. So if I just go in and actually do this particular attack, so I now trigger them. There's only so when I actually do the attack here, we've now sort of spotted them. They were hidden away. They've got a tier 3 and tier 2 units. Again, it becomes pretty easy to understand. Some little units do have some interesting things, but when you hover over it, you can sort of see what they end up doing. You can see what sort of damage that they do. The magic stuff. There's not a million different magic types, unlike Dominions. Or a billion. I'll say a billion. I'll use Ben's terminology. I shouldn't pick on Ben. I really do appreciate his perspective on things, but I think he's way off when it comes to Age of Wonders. I think he doesn't get just how immersive the game is and just how beautiful it is and how tactically brilliant it is. Anyway, we're going to go in. This is actually not a strong army. This is only 462. My armies alone, just one of them is 623. That one is 396. I think Ben sees these as the numbers that make up the calculation for combat. It's not. It actually plays out. So, for example, if I go in and attack this, all of these are going to be in this particular fight. I don't have to go in with everything, but maybe I shouldn't, just so I can sort of show in simple terms. I'll just move these out of the area of the attack. I've still got an advantage, even just with one unit. So it's a low risk battle. If there's anything that's going to be globally happening, it'll show it over through here before you go into battle. So misty, so every turn during combat, various mist clouds appear. And again, I can just hover over these to see what they do. So units that end their turn on this hex gain clinging mist. And so these are things, okay, does it mean that it's different every time you play it? Yeah, I guess so. If you're not playing against these in a misty area, you're not going to get this effect. This happens to be the effect of the combat. it's not onerous to see that. You can see we've got a slight advantage, so it's a low-risk battle. I can just auto-combat, and if I'm trying to learn the game, that can be a good way of doing it. So let's just say I auto-combat, and we got through. We lost a unit there, and I'll be thinking, okay, well, I probably could do better. I can watch the replay and see what actually happened. And this can be very, very interesting. I wish that there was actually a pause system during this so that you could actually analyse what's going on. The information that's presented to you in this game is actually really, really solid. Like, it's not just, it does present everything that goes on, which I can't do from this particular thing. But you can see there's different buffs going in. They're putting up shield walls. So our forces are the ones in the south. So we've buffed our units. They're now moving, and not moving to their full extent. They're just moving into a position where they can do a powerful attack next turn. Let's just see what happens in here. They've now applied a buff around this unit, and one of the units is now summoned in a spider because that's an ability that they have. Does that mean it's number wang? I don't think so. I think it's these little tags that Ben is referring to, is the stuff, and we've just caused burning happening across there as well. Again, that will be an ability. Units are moving in. We're using a ranged attack in through there. It's been poisoned and immobilized. This unit can't move. There'll be a number wang tag in there about that it can't move added to it. I find its user interface incredibly good. Like, it's just it makes it so you can see this one's burning, for example, and there's a buff. This one over here is I'm not sure what that one refers to. We've got the same thing over here. I can't remember what that little tag is. This one's burning as well. This one is the support unit, and so it's now focusing on this particular shield unit in here, and the shield unit is trying to protect the other units. So it's actually got the shield wall up. That's what that little one there means, and it's just been destroyed. So the combination of their arms by holding back has actually meant that when we've walked in, we've had to deal with a overwhelming attack, and we've now lost one of our low-level units. Back in through here, it then sort of continues on. There's different other effects that came in. Clinging mist has now sort of appeared around the place, which doesn't affect much in this particular scenario, unlike things like fire, for example. And now we're getting all sorts of different attacks coming in against their shield unit. So they've got like a tier 2 or is that a 3? There might be a tier 3 shield unit, which often will have different abilities that you then need to sort of counter. This guy's now gone back around to actually then go and kill off the mages, which is sort of something that you should be trying to do. This one is just a basic fighter, which is what that refers to. So just look at the icons. Now, even the fact that it actually just shows you what's at play, it's been flanked in that attack, so it's actually hitting from the rear, which gives it a big advantage. It's chess in a sense, like it's where one mistake actually can be completely debilitating. So this mage here is actually causing a lot of damage. And then we've got a support unit, which is usually good for buffing, but not all that important in terms of doing other things. So they've still got sort of essentially 3 mages, 2 support, which won't do much damage, and 1 mage, which will do a lot of damage. Now these, even though it's this one over here, we'll have a look at this one in just a minute. Yeah, it's a tier 3 shield unit, so it'll have some special ability because it's tier 3. Let's move back out of its way so we can actually then do a healing spell. They need to be outside of the movement range. And it's now sort of doing, it's triggering different sorts of status effects. Again, Ben would be saying that's all number wang effects. So Fury of the Tunneling Spider. Again, you build this ability up in your units. Like, it's something that I chose for my faction to actually have that. So it's sort of an ability where it doesn't do a lot in the combat, but it just helps a little bit. And those little things do actually help. So anyway, this is sort of happening. Let's just quit out of it. And so if I don't like the result, I can then go back in and retry and then do it again. So this is an early game. So it's, yes, do you consider those little buffs number wang? I don't. Ben does, for whatever reason. There's a billion of them, obviously. But the game has done a good job of actually now, and when it launched, it did have problems with with people getting confused of what the different units did. You can see visually that these guys are all riding spiders, so you can assume that they're going to be able to cast things like web and stuff. So it's intuitive to a large degree. And this is even 12 turns into the actual game. I'm getting meaningful little changes. If I go and grab one of these tier 1 units, there's a lot that does go on. This one here has got like a standard melee attack. It's got its web attack as well because it's riding spiders. It does have a little weird ability to renew itself. That's because of when we set the group up. And it also has shield wall, which defends those around it. So it's full of these little things where, yes, you do have to sort of understand what a shield unit does. And I know Ben does get that, so I don't think he's actually got a problem with this side of it. I think it's just as we sort of saw as the other things developed, that there were other things that did come in. Now, this is one of the examples where there is actually more complexity with these wisps than what there is with typical tier 1 mage units. And this will actually have an ability inside it where you do have to go in and actually click on it to have a look to see astral membrane. So we don't see this. But once you've played the game even once and you come across astral wisps, you'll know that, oh shit, I've got a 30% chance of becoming stunned if I attack it with melee. So yes, it is hidden. Okay, so I'll concede that it is hidden. I don't know how else you do it except that okay, that's a wisp. I'll avoid melee if I can help it, but it's only a 30% chance. Can I make it better for me to actually still attack it with melee? Yes, I can, because I have other buffs and things that will actually then counter that. And one of the things the game does very, very well when you do go and have a look at the actual units is it does present all these things, which Ben says this is too simple, and that the damage is then applied through these different resistances or if I go into this here, for example, you'll see that this is resistance where there's different resistance amounts from different types of magic, for example. In this case, it's got resistance reduces damage from magic attacks and combat spells. And then it's got different resistances coming through from that one. Now, if you're thinking in terms of the way Ben uses number weighing, you're thinking, well, they don't mean anything. Why is fire 0% and blight is 34%? That doesn't make any sense. Well, it does if you then delve deeper. But again, as you play the game, you realise, okay, look, this unit is set up where he does have different abilities, which will then kick in. There'll be other different things in here that will sort of show up. Where would it be? Not sure if any of those would actually do it. But there will be actually different things in through here where he's actually picked up other aspects that sort of tunneling spider boon. Does that one do it? Yeah, this one does blight damage, got life stealing, warped seasons. So this one has -2 fire protection. You can see there when I do hover over that one, it says it's got from 2 resistance -2 fire. That -2 fire is coming because of a global effect that affects everyone during the summer season of this particular game, and that's not a standard thing in the game. But it's all in there. If it's important, is it important? Maybe if you're struggling, like if you struggle, you save scum, you then delve deeper in and sort of see. There we go. You can sort of see. This is so fire weakness -2 coming from that aspect there, warped seasons. And that's a global thing. Everyone will have it. So that there's not really anything you can do about that so much. And so in this case, we've got fire weakness. We've got fire weakness in through there. We do actually have blight protection because of other bonuses that we've got as well. And so we're getting different protections in there as well. It's not number wang. It's not the terminology that Ben uses as number wang. It's something you build up and you embrace as you develop the system, just like in Dominions. Anyway, that's early game. Is it overly complex? Not overly. Is it still meaningful with the combat? Absolutely. I'll go to an end games just so you can see that one as well. I'll load this one in. I've obviously done a save during combat because it was complex. So really, really complex. And so this is in turn 2 of combat at turn 80 of the actual game. You can see strategic turn 80 there. Just load this one in, and I don't know what this will be, but obviously it was something that was. I'm thinking, oh wow, if I've got to come back and replay it, this will have to be where it is. There's obviously a lot of tactical choices that I had to make. So this is going to be full of number wang. full of it, and inert state systems. So you can see this is a complex battle going on through here. It's early in the battle. We've already used up one spell by the looks of things back in through here, and again it sort of goes through. This is how we get our casting points. Again, there's a whole lot of number wang there as to why we have 80 points left. if you need to read through it all, it's all in there. We get different things from different aspects in the game, and so this is outside of the battle, but that's all that number wang that you see there is actually the how we're getting to 95 points, and we've spent some of it already with some spell casting. We have mana to spend on spells as well. I won't go into too much detail, but these have got sort of like a lot of their really powerful units. Now, we've got a unit over through here. Now, Ben also mentioned about that the morale needed to be, you had to destroy a whole army to affect their morale. We've got a unit here which is ready to run already. So this one here, its morale is dropped, and I don't know why. I can't think of what the reason would be with, actually, well, I can find out. I can just see in through here. So in this case, we've got a... morale is very low. It's despairing and close to breaking. Its fumble chance is now 40%. So it's actually got a much lower chance of actually doing anything meaningful. It's a high-level unit, this particular one. It's a swamp troll. So it has special abilities. But anyway, it's got allied heroes already been killed, allies been killed, allied hero killed, allied killed. So all these things. And Ben was saying it's all about you have to kill most of the army to get the last few little units to run. It's not true. You can see there's still a hell of a lot of units on this battlefield. Now, they will possibly all be suffering from this. You can see I've got different units now running in behind other units. This one here is actually still pretty healthy. Other things are still being applied to it. Its fumble chance is now 20%. So we've done reasonably well. This one's also getting ready to hit. And so these may have actually also taken critical hits as well. Yeah, -5 hit by a critical attack. So every time, this is where the morale system is fully exploitable in the game. I won't go into it in too much depth, but this is what Ben's referring to as the little tags as to why has this unit got so much applying to him. And we can sort of see down through here that there are a lot of, these are the tags over through here. When I click on the unit, when I hover over the unit, I then get, hang on, where is it? I'll just come back into it again. When I come back into it, this is a Temptress. And so she has all those little tags. She's been electrified for 3 turns. She's got field tactics, which sort of gives her a bonus. And if I want to find out what they are, just look at it. You know, this unit has +1 defense and +1 resistance. It's got overwhelmed tactics. It has 20% critical hit chance. This is like a positive morale boost. What it does do is the morale of this unit is incredibly high. If I have a look at this one through here, this one's got a +20% critical hit chance. The -5 is that it's been hit by a critical attack, so it's not as high as it could be. But we've positively hit the enemy in different ways already in this particular game. But delving into this. Obviously, this was at a critical phase of the combat where I can't see it just instinctively here to think, oh, okay, I must have moved, I must have had a choice. I'd have to really analyse it to have a look at it, which I do love, but I'm not going to spend 10 minutes trying to figure out which unit I need to move first in this instance, which I'm thinking is what Ben is saying is wrong with the game, is that you do need to spend that time to get into it. It's not a trivial game. This is a complex game. This is late game, though, so, I mean, my saving grace is here. I haven't played with these units for a long time, and I've forgotten what their abilities are, so I don't instinctively have that connection with them that I have when I'm playing it, every day or so. So there are lots of things in here that I can meaningfully do. Again, you can see there that, again, morale is really, really important with what's going on in the way that this battle is sort of forming. Once the units, they don't have a cascading morale system like Field of Glory or anything like that, which is part of the tabletop's system in that game. But in this game, it does still, morale is vitally important, to sort of target different things. This is a number wang system where this abominable mistling has actually got other abilities as well that it can then go and do that that make it so that it's a very unique fighting unit, for example. This is a very, very unique unit in the game. it isn't a part of the stock standard game. Like, it's actually something you have to unlock in a very, very complex way. Gives you an incredible power fantasy to play with this unit in the battle, more so than your heroes, because it's probably already done a lot of the actual, you can see there that a lot of the damage has been done in through here, and so this unit here would have already done all of that, I would guess, just because of what its abilities actually are. And you can see down through there it's hardly taken any damage. So it's got all these different abilities as well, and if I go and click on this unit, there'll be all sorts of different things that are affecting what it does. Is it number wang? I don't think so. Ben does, I think. There's different abilities that he's got. Like, he's actually got blight weakness. That's just sort of innate with him. Like, if you go back into his resistances, he's still got good resistance across the board. It's certainly much better than what we saw there with the, back at the start of the game, because we've actually we've developed our faction up. Our faction has got all these different abilities. Anyway, I'm not going to belabor it, but this is, this I think must have been at the end of a turn or something, I think. And if I'll just end the turn, and just so you can sort of see what actually happens here. This is different morale buffs and things. This is global, just from a unit that we've actually got. This flying unit here gives morale buffs everywhere. We've got clinging mists now affecting this particular combat as well. Again, it'll show it over the side here if there's different things coming in. So now using different attacks. I think it was after this one that I then had to make this, choices. So we've got this is units that have leveled up quite dramatically. They're attacking the big unit. This is our most powerful unit in the combat. So different units are now going to focus on him. Oh my God, the number wang is driving me nuts. And this is one of their powerful heroes. Very, very powerful hero that is actually that is being affected by the morale system to start to fumble a bit. And even though he's getting flanking shots on this warrior and doing good damage, it's still not debilitating just yet. And we've been able to position different units to sort of, like this one had to break out of a zone of control where it had an opportunity to attack against it to before it could come in and do its attack. But see how the AI is actually is very, very strong, with what it will then target. It's trying to stop this thing to allow its mage to actually act, so it's trying to get rid of the units that are touching it in through there. There's one behind it there that they were trying to get rid of. That one also had to move away. It had to move away from this unit and to be able to then move into this other position. And it's now just attacking this other unit in through here. Now it tried to run away but got constricted. There will be a number wang tag next to this unit showing that it actually can't move, that it's immobile because of the tentacle that's there, which is one of the abilities that the tentacles have. So if you're watching this and thinking, oh my God, this is just overly complex, it's way too much to take on board. Yes, you are right. It is a lot to take on board. It's late game. You've eventually earned your way here. And as Ben's admitted himself, he never gets to this part of the game. He never sees this. He never sees the progression to get to this part of the game. This is not something that you bounce into at the start. It's way too complex for that. But by the time you're here, you're so invested. You're so invested in the game that you want to just keep on playing and playing, because this is hard stuff. Like, it's now our turn to play. You can see we've lost half our health here with this big guy. And yes, he does have hit points. I know that Ben was sort of saying that there should be, there should be armor. It should come off different things. It is a buff on hit points, and this is something that Ben says is a negative. It's not. It's just a game mechanic. It's a game mechanic that this game uses, and it uses it well. In terms of any of the buffing, I can hover over different things to sort of see, how things are applied. Everything has got tooltips. Everything is presented extremely well. I really think, to be honest, even though Ben's saying all these tags everywhere are number wang, sort of making the game, like this one here's got a heap of stuff going on. I don't need to know it. I just need to. I can see immediately, instinctively, that this unit is either got like the sort of gold-coloured ones are sort of showing that there's obviously some good things going on, and then we've got some dark ones as well showing that some bad things going on as well. But overall, this thing has been buffed quite strongly. And if I go and click on it, I can then go and see. It's got bolstered defense, bolstered resistance, it's burning, so that's a negative. Clinging mist is around it, which is just, that's what that little wavy thing is I couldn't recognise before. Fortune, it's low morale, is a negative. and it's strengthened. So these are what those little icons are showing. It's not. It's just part of the user experience, part of the user interface. Anyway, I'm not going to keep on going. I'm going to call it quits here, guys. Thanks for watching, and I hope it makes sense. I hope it also clarifies if you're someone who watches my channel and haven't really been exposed to this verb wang that we had that meant nothing to me. If it meant nothing to you as well, then hopefully this explains, I think, where Ben's coming from. I think that Ben obviously sort of communicates with these terms regularly, and so he actually sees it as being in standard use, I would imagine. It certainly wasn't for me. I do feel a bit vindicated with those early ones. Power Fantasy, I didn't know what it was, but the others, I think, even when you logically are trying to apply it to things, it didn't make sense. Listening to what Ben said again the second time made me realise he wasn't referring to what ChatGPT even sort of said it was. He was referring to the systems of things, for example, like that we've just got a simple hit point system here for our units with a whole lot of different applications that then get applied to this one mechanic, rather than actually splitting it up into different things coming off, for example, armor and stuff like that. So for Ben, it's more immersive if it does split things off into more complex systems you have to learn at the start, whereas for me this becomes much more of a puzzle game where you are defending one thing here through different abilities. So anyway, difference of opinion, I guess. Anyway, I will leave it there. It's been a lot longer than I thought it was going to be honest, just to go through this. But yeah, it was a fun discussion. I can't wait for our next discussion. But I hope this puts into some perspective. I did want to try to put into perspective what Ben was getting at, because I really didn't get it, and I think I sort of understand where he's coming from now. He'll still say I probably haven't, which I'll be interested to hear from him about that. But my take on it is that I think that he's actually dealing on a philosophical level with the actual overall game approach and the game, rather than the specifics of making the most from the player experience. I think is sort of where certainly that's where my head was at when we were discussing things. I'll catch you later. Please like and subscribe if you like this sort of content. I'll see you around.